A warm welcome to all attending the webinar today on parenting children in a digital age. My name is Christine Kritzas and I'm a counseling psychologist at LightHouse Arabia. And I look forward to spending the next hour with all of you discussing such a pertinent subject as technology in the home. Now, it maybe seems a bit benign because everyone has it, and the very thing in question is in everyone's pockets. We use it day in and day out. We use it for business. We use it for socializing. Our children use it to socialize. And so it seems quite benign, but somehow we all have this inkling that we're going down the wrong path. And we somehow know that technology is using us as opposed to us using technology. And in this dance with technology, we find that technology is leading in the dance versus us being able to lead the way. Now, before I get started, I want to just make a disclaimer. The first disclaimer I'm going to make is that you as parents meet yourselves with compassion because you're doing the best with what you have right now. And when you know better, you will do better. So it's not that you leave the session feeling that you're not doing enough, you're not good enough. It's that you leave the session with a better understanding of the relationship between technology, child development, and their relationships as a whole, right? So just something to think about. And we are all raising children in a technology-infused world, right? And so we are all in this together. So I just want you guys to remember that. I want you to understand that this is a controversial topic and that some parents allow their children more tech usage than others. Some parents allow their kids a phone at age 5. Some parents say they'll only give their children a phone at age 30. You know, so each to their own. I'm not here to tell you how and what you need to be doing, but I'm just here to provide some information for you to go and reflect on how you're going to move forward with technology in your home based off of your values, okay? And, you know, it's something that we think that our children are only addicted, but it was about a year ago, I decided to delete Instagram from my phone. And I found myself for the first day being able to be without it. But after day 2 came along, I started feeling a bit anxious and I started feeling a bit edgy. And I realized that I too am addicted. And so if we as adults have the self-regulation skills and we have many other skills in our toolbox and we can't cope with being off it, how do children feel? So just something for us to keep in mind. Now, about the Lighthouse, we're a mental health and wellbeing center located in central Dubai, where we offer psychological services and psychiatric care to individuals across the lifespan. And I can share more about our services at the end of the session. But I really want to get into the meat of the presentation here today. Right, so today's agenda. We are going to be looking at why we are speaking about this. And I'm going to take you through the effects of entertainment technology on a child's self-identity, on their brain development, on the way they navigate themselves in relationships, on their physical and mental health. And then I'm going to be sharing with you some practical strategies that you can start doing today in your home. And what I want to say about technology is that it's not all doom and gloom. We know that the very reason that we can have this webinar today is thanks to technology. And we know that, you know, children are more tech savvy than we are. And we know that, you know, that is the future for our children. But we just want to make sure that they are still developing the way they need to, in the ways that they need to. So a few quotes here. The first quote, God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. The second quote, actually, we don't allow the iPad in the home. We think it's too dangerous for them in effect. The third quote, I can control my decision, which is that I don't use that beep. I can control my kids' decisions, which is that they're not allowed to use that beep. The short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops that we have created are destroying how society works. The first quote comes from Sean Parker, who was the founding president of Facebook. The second quote comes from the late Steve Jobs, founder of Apple. And when he did an interview with a New York Times reporter, and the New York Times reporter said to him, "So, your kids must love the iPad." He turned around and said, "They haven't used it." The third quote comes from Kamath Palihapitiya, who is the former VP president of Facebook. And what I want to highlight here is that many modern Silicon Valley parents strongly restrict technology use in the home, and some of the area's top schools minimize tech in the classroom. So the very people that are creating it aren't allowing children to use it. Why? Because they know the effects that it's having on the developing brain. Now, parents versus entertainment technology. And something that I just want to mention here is I'm speaking about the effects of entertainment technology. I'm not speaking about the effects of education technology. So this webinar is focusing more on entertainment technology. This webinar is focusing more on what your children are doing when they come home from school. And if they have phones, what they're doing during school. Now, problematic interactive media use can appear in one of four ways. It can be through video gaming. It can be through social media use. It can be through watching pornography. Yes, children do watch pornography. And yes, children do have access to this. So something we just need to think about here. It can also be through information seeking, right? Just endless scrolling on the internet. So something we need to understand here is the omnipresence of the internet. We need to understand that there are some destabilizing external forces that children are faced with today. Children are faced with pressures from every which angle. And there's an overbearing and demanding school system, right? There's the exposure to drugs and alcohol. There's the ruthless consumer marketing to kids. There's bullying. There's economic uncertainty that actually filters down onto children. We are all in a pandemic. We are still in a pandemic, and that has its own stresses and strains. But we also know that children are at a vulnerable age and they lack the ability to regulate themselves, and they are more vulnerable to peer pressure, right? They are also not very aware of what technology is doing to their self-esteem. They think that they are connecting with people, but they are actually using it to compare themselves. Right? So what we've seen is that the phone has the ability to kill children's passion for hobbies and interests. Because with the phone, they don't need to leave their room, right? With the phone, they think they're connecting with their friends, right? And these are the heroes, mentors, and icons that your children look up to. These are the super peers in your child's life, okay? Now, I remember when I was a child, when I went to my mom and said, "Mom, I want to go and play at so-and-so's house." And my mom maybe didn't like the kid. My mom would say to me, "Christine, I don't know if you should hang out with that girl. She's too big for her boots, and I don't want you playing with her. So no, you're not going to her house. You're not going to visit there. She can come and play at our house when there's the supervision of parents in our home, but you're not going to her house." And so my mom was able to control who I was engaging with when I was engaging with them. But now your children have got these super peers, and these super peers influence the way your child sees the world. They have an influence on whether your child has underage sex. They have the influence over your child's values. And we know that the top 3 values that are communicated to children on social media are: if you are thin, if you are rich, if you are famous, then that equates to success. Now just look at the screen. Top left corner is Ryan from Ryan's Toy Reviews, right? So Ryan's career started at the age of 3 when his parents would film him opening and reviewing new toys daily just for fun. And he already has 28 million subscribers. His net worth is estimated to be around 22 million, excuse me, not 22, that was in 2018, $32 million as of 2020. And so we also see YouTube pranksters like Logan Paul, bottom right screen, who received a lot of backlash from the public for posting a video showing a dead body that he had stumbled upon in the Japanese notorious suicide forest. But children are looking up to this guy, okay? Then we've got the likes of the Kim Kardashians, the Justin Biebers, Selena Gomez, right? And so this is what your children are looking up to, right? And it takes a village to raise your children. This is the village, okay? So just something to think about, because sex and consumerism are the top two values communicated on these platforms. Now, just some facts about technology usage. What we see is that since the onset of the pandemic, media usage has doubled. So pre-pandemic, teens were using technology 4 hours per day. Now they're using it 8 hours a day. Children were using technology 3.8 hours a day. Now they're using it 7.7 hours per day. We know that cyberbullying has increased by 70% since the onset of the pandemic, 70%. We know that there's a 40% increase in toxicity on online gaming platforms. Can I see a show of hands? How many of you have your children playing Roblox? Okay. Okay. So CNN released a post late last year about how Roblox has these strip clubs in it. So the actual game has got these strip clubs in it. The actual game has got, your child is engaging with strangers on the platform. So there are predators that are communicating with your child on this platform. And so I think this is just something to be aware of when we are allowing our children access to these games and what the implications of that can be. So the fact about this is that it hurts. Excessive use of entertainment technology is harmful to children on an emotional level, on a psychological level, on a physical level, on the intellectual level, neurologically, and I will share more about this, socially, and I'll share more about this. So what is the impact of technology on a child's self-identity? What we know is that self-identity is a task of childhood and adolescence. So one of the tasks is to get to know themselves. Who am I is the question, right? And we are social beings, and there's self-observation and there's feedback and information from the social world, which plays a fundamental role in our identity formation. Okay, so something we need to understand is that heavy use of entertainment technology is impacting the child's identity formation process. Now, the way we form a self-identity is we receive feedback from the external world. Now, think back to the time that you were growing up. Think back to the feedback that you were getting from the external world. That feedback was coming from your parents, from your siblings, from your cousins, from your peers in your classroom, from your teachers, from, the church that you used to go to on a Sunday, or from a group that you used to do sport with, a team. So that was your feedback. That was your feedback loop. It was quite small, if you think about it. Now, children's feedback comes from across the globe, comes from children online from a different continent, right? So the feedback loop has become a lot bigger. And so this really impacts how children start to view themselves. And they start shifting and becoming something different. Because guess what? They now have two identities. They have their real identity and they have their virtual identity. And then they start experiencing inner conflict, because who I am online is not who I am in person. And I want to give you an example of how social media starts to shape a person's identity. Think of a girl, 11-year-old girl, who posts a picture of her guitar on her Instagram page. And she gets 10 likes. Next week, she posts a picture of her playing the guitar and she gets 100 likes. Okay. The next week, she posts a picture of her playing the guitar and she had done her hair and she's wearing makeup. She gets 300 likes. What is that communicating to her? That I'm going to start being a certain way because that means that I fit in more. And I don't know about you guys, but everybody's starting to look a bit like Kim Kardashian on social media, right? A lot of people are starting to look that way. The way their eyebrows are done, maybe the fillers, maybe this, maybe that. And so the uniqueness of your identity is lost. And we know that self-identity has two parts, self-awareness and self-esteem, right? And we are often trying to do things a certain way because we want that sense of affiliation. But we're losing our uniqueness as a result. And we see how self-identity is externalized, right? And we see how children are engaged in consumerism, right? And so this is just something for us to be thinking about over here. And an example that I would want to share with you here is back in South Africa, when I was in private practice there, I was seeing an 11-year-old boy. And it was about 2 weeks before his 12th birthday. And he came in for a session and he said, I'm actually very worried. And I said to him, what are you worried about? He said, my mom said that when I turn 12, I can get Instagram. But Christine, I don't know what to post. What if my friends don't like any of my posts? And this created so much anxiety in this kid. And then I had a 16-year-old that I was working with here in Dubai, and she got grounded because of something she did. And as a result, her phone got taken away from her. And I met up with her for a session a week later. And I said to her, how are you feeling about the fact that your phone's got taken away? She said, well, it sucks that I can't speak to my friends, but I actually feel a lot calmer that I don't have the phone because I don't have that pressure of having to send my friends streaks on Snapchat. Okay. You don't know what streaks are, just Google it. And so what we're finding is that healthy self-development is not happening for these kids. It's stunted. Okay. What is happening in the brain? Our high-tech revolution has plunged us into a state of continual partial attention. We're always online. And what we are finding is that scientists are seeing that endless hours of unrelenting digital connectivity can create a unique type of brain strain, okay? And many people who have been working on the internet for several hours without taking a break are starting to make frequent errors in their work. And upon signing off, they are more irritable, they're spaced out, they're fatigued, and they have what is known as digital fog, okay? And what we also see is that this kind of stress releases cortisol and adrenaline, right? And in the short run, we find that this actually boosts energy, right? And it actually augments our memory. But over long term, it actually impairs a person's cognition. It can lead to depression, and it can even reshape underlying brain structures. Okay. So what we see here is that entertainment technology is starting to impact children's attention span. Kids' attention spans are as long as an Instagram story is. That's not very long. And we see that reading versus technology time is very different. Reading a book versus reading on a screen has several effects on our learning and our ability to integrate information, right? But before I even go into that, I want to say something that the developing brain is more susceptible to developing addictions. When you speak with an addict, a drug addict, and you ask them when did they start using drugs, 99% of them will say they started before the age of 18. And what do we know here is that there is some evidence that the baseline levels of dopamine are a lot lower in teenagers than in adults. So imagine that this is an adult's dopamine levels. These are teens' dopamine levels. When an adult gets a dopamine hit, when an adult goes onto Instagram and sees they got 5 likes, they get a dopamine hit, okay, that comes up to here. When a teen goes online and they see they got 5 likes, their dopamine hit goes a lot higher than what an adult does, which is enough to bring about a stronger release, which can cause the dopamine-inducing, the craving of dopamine-inducing experiences, okay? So whatever your child is doing now, they can potentially become addicted to. So if they are gaming every day, that will be their go-to. If they start drinking alcohol, that will be their go-to, right? And so what we see as well is that Harvard professors are actually asking people to use paper and pen for better attention and retention than using a screen, right? And so what we see is that reading books is like scuba diving. Going on the internet and reading articles online is like jet skiing, okay? Why? Because reading develops reflection, it develops deep critical thinking, it develops problem solving and vocabulary, right? Whereas when we are on the internet, we're just on the surface of where we need to be, okay? Screens make us read slower, they make us learn less deeply, we remember less, we sleep worse, okay? So what we also need to understand, and this is something that Professor Andrew Dillon from the University of Texas speaks about, because he has studied reading, and he says that we've spent so much time touching, pushing, linking, scrolling, flicking, jumping through text, that when we actually have to sit down and read a novel, your daily habits of jumping, clicking, linking have just been so deeply ingrained in you that this is boring. And I also want you guys to think about this whole idea about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So ADHD, that every second child gets diagnosed with. And that the more your child uses entertainment technology, the more chance they will receive such a diagnosis. Because just think about this for a moment. Let's say a teacher, Mrs. Hanson, is standing in front of a classroom with a blackboard behind her, and she's wearing a gray outfit, and she's trying to explain to the class, you know, what velocity means. And the children are looking at her and they're thinking, why is Miss Hanson not turning different colors and spinning around? And if you push her head, she does something funny or something comes out of her. Because they're so used to that on their entertainment screens. They're so used to that when they're gaming, that when they sit in the class and the teacher's standing by the blackboard or by the smart screen, they can't focus because the teacher isn't animated, okay? Then also, what we want to look at is how memory and learning is impacted, how people are experiencing information overload. There's too much multitasking, and guys, multitasking is a lie, because all that multitasking is switching between tasks in rapid succession. So your brain is still having to focus on one task at a time. And we know that multitasking causes us 40% loss in productivity, okay? Right? And decision-making is something that children are not very good at doing because their default is to be impulsive and emotional, because their prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for executive functioning and decision-making, isn't fully developed yet. It only is fully developed at the age of 24, 25 years old. So when you ask your child, what were you thinking? The chances are they weren't thinking, okay? Right? And so there is that impulsivity. And it's so easy for them to send a nasty text to someone. It's so easy for them to laugh at someone on their WhatsApp group chat. It's so easy for them to do these things, right? And these people are known as keyboard ninjas, right? Very brave behind the keyboard. Okay. How is it impacting our relationships when we know that relationships provide children with a foundation of values, love, security, and support, right? And they're critical in the establishment of children's self-esteem and their attitudes towards others. Now, Sherry Turkle, who is the author of the book Alone Together, and she studied how technology is shaping modern day relationships, says how we can bail out of our physical reality at any given time, right? And we can enter this virtual realm. It's easier for us to text than talk. We can have each other at a distance in amounts that we're able to control, right? WhatsApp has made it possible for us to hide from each other, but we can still be connected to each other, right? And the commitment of real-time talking for children is far too anxiety-provoking, right? And so what we need to understand is that technology is impacting our ability to engage with other people, right? It's impacting our ability to read facial expressions, to try and understand emotional messages, to understand body language, right? And what we know about technology is that it's clean. It's not as messy as real relationships, right? And so about 2 years ago, I was sitting at a restaurant and there was a family sitting next to me. The one person was on their phone, the other person was on the tablet, and the other person was reading the menu. Now, not to give away ages here, but the person on the phone was the mother. The person on the tablet was her son. And the person reading the menu and trying to get people's attention was the poor grandmother, okay? And so what we see is that children are not learning how to have relationships, not learning how to resolve conflict, you know, and to be in a conflict with someone either. When you go to restaurants, a lot of parents are speaking to each other, but the children are on the tablets, right? And so children are not having an opportunity to see how adults converse with one another. And I remember as a kid going to a restaurant and being as bored as ever, right? And looking at my parents debating with my uncle and aunt about, you know, which country makes the best halloumi, you know, Cyprus or Greece. And so having to watch them do this, but still having them, you know, being able to agree to disagree. These are relationship skills that children are missing out on, right? And what we see is that when children are spending time online, they're having less time to practice communicating in real time. They're also showing signs of less empathy and selflessness. We see a lot of children showing traits of narcissism because there's a decline in empathy, right? And increased exposure to pornographic content, okay? And we see that family life and relationships are also changing. And there's this lack of parental authority and know-how. Parents are far less tech savvy than their children, right? And children sometimes look at parents and think, oh, what a buffoon, you know, you don't know how to use this, you know, and there's also a lack of respect that comes with that. And children are also engaging in far more independent communication. Parents don't know who their child is communicating with. And I actually attended a conference in Los Angeles in July 2018. And it was an annual school counselors conference. And at this conference, there was a lady speaking about the impact of technology on children's confidence. And she used an analogy that has always stuck with me. She said, would you give your child keys to a car when they turn 18 and say, here we go, my darling, many happy miles, and you haven't taught your child how to drive a car, the child hasn't got a license to drive the car, the child doesn't understand the etiquette of the road? Would you do that, yes or no? Then why do we feel it's okay to give our children a smartphone at age 5, 6, 7, 8, 13, 15, 18, but we haven't taught them the etiquette online? We haven't taught them netiquette, how to be on the internet. We haven't taught them how to set boundaries. We haven't seen whether they have a strong sense of self, right? And the funny thing is that your child can go very much further with their smartphone than what they can with a car, just from the corner of their room. They can be speaking to predators, right, just from the corner of their room. And then we see how it affects our physical and mental health. So children don't know how to sit with difficult feelings. They don't know how to sit with boredom, and they don't know how to sit with the challenges that come from daily life. And I want to say something. If your child comes to you and they say that they are bored, just know that you are succeeding as a parent in 2022. You can give yourself a tap on the back because you're doing a really good job. Allow your children to experience boredom, because creativity often precedes boredom, right? Or should I say boredom actually precedes creativity, right? So children don't know how to sit with difficult feelings. And if they do not know how to manage difficult feelings, they become adults who also suppress their feelings by binge watching on Netflix, by comfort eating, by abusing drugs and alcohol, right? That's suppression. And we see how it's affecting children's physical health, how it's impacting on their ability to exercise. They're living more sedentary lifestyles. They are eating more junk food. They're engaging in high-risk behavior. The lack of sleep is one of the biggest concerns, right? We are facing a sleep loss epidemic. Children who are using their tablets in the room at night, there's a big concern for that because of the blue light effects, right? And the fact that the blue light that emanates from the smartphone actually delays the release of melatonin, the sleep hormone. So we're also seeing how it's impacting children's mental health. We are seeing that, you know, it also impacts girls more. Girls are impacted a lot earlier than boys. And a psychologist from the University of Glasgow, Dr. Holly Scott, explains this. And she says that there are different sensitivity periods for boys and girls, but girls seem to be more sensitive to the impact of social media slightly earlier than boys because of the maturational processes like puberty, right? But we see how this is impacting kids and how there are increased rates of depression and anxiety in youth because of this. And we also see that you know, the creators of Facebook and Instagram and all other social media platforms know how to make money off of our attention. They know how to optimize for engagement. Why do you think WhatsApp has the feature so-and-so is typing? So that you can stay online for longer to see them finish the message, right? And the likes and the followers and the endless scrolling and the pull to refresh. It's the same function as what you do when you pull the slot machine at the casino, right? Same function, same parts of the brain being hit. And I don't know about you guys, but I've tried to leave Facebook before, and then I get messages and emails saying, your friend so-and-so is going to miss you, don't leave, so-and-so is still on, right? So these are things that are happening that we need to be aware of. Now that we have gone through the effects of technology, I want us to look at what you can do. And what you can do is so much, right? We want to develop default values, develop default attitudes. We want children to have physical habits. We want children to understand that they need free time and play, right? To develop social skills, to be informed and engage with media and the online virtual world, right? We don't want to take technology away from our kids. We just want them to become more tech savvy and to use tech in a smarter fashion, okay? So I want to start with this, and this is something that I often share with parents in my work with them. There's something known as values-driven parenting, and there's something known as rules-driven parenting. When we engage in rules-driven parenting, and our child says to you, but why can't I go to the movies again? And you say to your child, because I said so, the child is going to think, okay, but I'm not getting an explanation for this. I don't understand. Rules-driven parenting is very authoritarian. It's my way or the highway, right? And we know what happens to these kids. These kids end up lying to their parents, okay? These kids end up rebelling. Whereas with values-driven parenting, it's anchored in a value when I say you can't do something, right? So if it is that your child isn't sharing their sweets with their cousin, you can say to your child, you will be grounded for this. And I'm going to tell you why. Because in our family, we value generosity and sharing. And you are not being generous by not sharing your sweets with your cousin. And so what I encourage parents to do is to create a values wheel, okay? So this weekend, go to Creative Minds or to a stationery store, CNA, PNA, get yourself a A3 canvas and some paint, etc. And have your children create the values wheel with you. And speak with your spouse about what are our values in the home? What do we want children to leave the home with? What's our default value system going to be, right? And think of at least your top 10 values that you want your children to leave the house with, and put them on a values wheel. And when your child acts out of line, you can say to them, you will be grounded for this because in our home we value X, Y, and Z. If your child starts karate lessons and after day one says they want to quit, you can turn and say, you know what? Actually, no, you're not going to quit because in our home we value perseverance and you will finish the term. And we value starting and finishing something that we've started, right? So you anchor it in a value every single time. And this becomes the child's default value system. Okay, and you need to think about what are the values you want your children to leave the house with one day, okay? Because without even realizing it, inadvertently, they do leave the house with certain values. About 3 years ago, I left my apartment in a rush and I forgot to switch off all the lights. And I came home late that evening and all the lights were on in my apartment. And I got this sick feeling in my stomach. And I just heard my dad's voice in my head saying, Christine, switch off the lights. And in our home, energy saving was a value. And I didn't realize how strong of a value it was until that happened. And so I want you guys to be very intentional about what are our values in the house and why do we say our children have to get off the iPad? Because in our home, we value health, or in our home, we value knowledge and learning. And you're not learning much when you're playing that Minecraft every single day. What else can you do? Set limits for the child's exposure to technology, emphasize values, also highlight their passions and their strengths. You are going to be that feedback loop for them forming that self-identity, right? And you want to engage in reflective practice with them. You want them to maybe journal. You want to ground them in their reality, right? This is who you really are. That's not who you are online when you are posing and pouting like that, right? You're trying to be someone that you're not, okay? Surrounding yourself and engaging with real healthy role models. So if your child is on social media, make sure that they're following people who can be super peers that actually inspire them, right? The Richard Bransons of this world, okay? So the Rafael Nadals of this world, the Roger Federers of this world, right? So if they're going to be following people, get them to follow those, all right? And you want to also walk the talk here with your children. And what I mean here is avoid oversharing on social media. Ask your children for permission before you post about them, right? Set a time every side to set a time every day to shut down your devices and fully intentionally engage in face-to-face contact, so that your teens can learn verbal and nonverbal cues that are so important in communication. And really walk your talk here. And what I mean by this is, when you're having dinner, you be off your phone, okay? Give children your full attention when they're speaking with you. And if you cannot speak with them, then just say, I'm busy with something. I will get to you in a moment, right? So these are some things to think about. And also some conversation starters for parents. Find opportunities to connect with your children. Look out for the conversation opportunities. Stand in a position of curiosity rather than standing in a position of judgment and knowing. When your child is watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians, don't go into the room and say, what nonsense are you watching here? What are you going to learn from this? Like, you're going to become just like them. That's going to make the child want to watch it even more. But if you go and sit with them and you say, wow, what do you think is too much sharing? Like, what do you think of Kim's stance there with her mom? Like, what do you think of so-and-so's relationship with her sister? And you also want to ask your kids, would this pass the golf news test? So would what you're sharing now, if it were to be displayed on golf news, how would you feel? And what would happen to you? Okay. You want to insert your views in a non-judgmental, caring way. You want to remind them of their futures, that everyone reviews social media sites. And when you are applying for that college admission, or you are, the person who someone is interviewing you, just remember that they're going to ask for your Instagram handle and your Facebook, and they're going to Google your name and see what comes up. And children need boundaries, because the more boundaries there are in place, the more safe and secure a child will feel. And we want to aim for an authoritative parenting style, which is one where we allow children space to do things, but within limits. And be friendly with your children, but don't be their friend. Don't be their best friend. And I'll tell you why. Because if you're their best friend, they can also block you. They can also slam the door in your face, right? They don't know who is the boss in the house. And when they don't know who is the boss in the house, they can start feeling quite anxious. They need an adult. Parenting is not a democracy. You can be friendly with your children. They can share things with you. You can share things with them, but they need to know who's in charge here. And so it's important to know that the more safe and secure your child feels, the more confident they will be to engage in healthy exploration. For the brain, what can we do? Cultivate single tasking. Get your children to do one thing at a time. When they are eating, they are just eating. They're not eating and watching TV, right? When they are playing puzzles, they're just playing puzzles. When they are doing their homework, they're just doing their homework. Engage in mindfulness in the home. Have sacred spaces in the home where no technology is allowed. Have some downtime built into the day. Get your children to play chess or do puzzles, right? Avoid the entertainment-based technology if your children haven't had the necessary other tasks built into the day. And I'm going to get into this in a moment. And having blue light blocking glasses can help with their ability to fall asleep at night. With relationships, you want to converse about messages that they are getting. You want to model healthy relationships. You want to use technology as a tool to strengthen offline relationships. And I'm of the opinion that as a parent, if you tell your child, you can use this phone, but I want you to know that I'm going to have access to it at any point in time, that's okay, right? We're not after privacy. Yeah, you can respect your child's privacy in other ways. If you want to write things in a journal, here's a journal, I'll never read it. But I need to know who you're being in contact with, okay? Make emotional intelligence a priority, and I'll get to this in a moment, but also be aware of sexualized content. Right? Some additional recommendations. Yeah, parents often ask, how much time is okay for my kids online? Children younger than 18 months need to avoid media use all in all, except for video chatting with family overseas. Children between 18 to 24 months are allowed high quality programming. Preschoolers, no more than 1 hour per day of high quality programming. If the child is 6 years or older, what we need to know here is you don't want media to displace other important activities. If your child has gotten their hour of exercise daily, if your child has had a full night's sleep of 9 to 10 hours, sometimes 11 hours, if your child has had the family meal and connected with others and has had the unplugged downtime, and there's maybe still some time left in the day, yes, then they can go on to entertainment technology if there's time left in the day, if they've done all the necessary other developmental tasks, right? And co-view media with your kids to help them learn from what people are doing, seeing, and saying online. No studying with the phone in the room. Decide when all devices get turned off at night. Decide where devices will charge overnight, right? I am more prone to saying, let the devices charge outside the parents' room than in the kitchen or the family room, because I've had clients say to me, you know, they got up at 3 a.m. in the morning and they walked into the child's room and the child was on the iPad, right? Or the child fell asleep with the iPad under the pillow. So please do take note of that. And choose and diversify your media. I love common sense media for reviewing what are age appropriate apps and what's best for your child. You want to co-view the movies with your child. You want to co-play video games. You want to embrace their world. Don't take it away from them, but get involved. Get to see, how do they play Minecraft? What are they doing in Minecraft? Right? So you want to get involved there and understand more of that. And balancing online and offline time, making sure children have time for reading and engaging in their hobbies and having real-time connections with their friends, playing board games, having creative time, playing team sports, right? Being outside. And here are some helpful websites for children. As I said, I'm a big fan of Common Sense Media and smartsocial.com. So these are two that I often turn to, and you can actually get access to a membership with smartsocial.com, and you can watch live webinars on the different things that are happening and how to have more parenting controls on your iPhone, on your Android, you know, setting limits on what children may use and how long they can use an app for. That's all available. And you can see that on smartsocial.com. The key for every parent is to facilitate a healthy, balanced relationship with technology, being aware of its pitfalls and helping children integrate media into their lives in positive ways. And something that I didn't mention earlier is that I am the creator of a children's board game named Smart Heart Board Game, which aims at facilitating emotional intelligence in kids. And these are some additional resources that you can use with your children. Smart Heart helps with broadening a child's emotional vocabulary, gets children to share what's happening in the classroom, on the playground, on the sports field, on play dates. Parents have a window into the child's world. And so the game also helps with fostering empathy, with getting children to be aware of themselves, be aware of their social interactions with others, be aware of how they regulate emotions, right? And so this is available from LightHouse Arabia. We are also selling the game on Amazon.ae, and that includes free delivery. And we also have booster packs for the board game that we are going to be launching soon. A booster pack on bullying, a booster pack on divorce or separation, a booster pack on digital citizenship, which ties in very well with this talk today on how can children become better digital citizens, a booster pack on third culture kids. We're also going to be releasing an inner peace puzzle set in the year, and we've just translated the board game into Arabic. So if you're interested in finding more about that, you can follow us on our Smart Heart Board Game Instagram page. We also have a parenting page called Lighthearted Parenting. We have an Instagram main page at LightHouse Arabia, and our managing director and clinical psychologist at LightHouse Arabia, Dr. Salia Afridi, also has a page where she shares information about your own journey through transformation and healing and the inner journey. And Dr. Salia co-created version 2.0 of Smart Heart Board Game with me. And we also have pages for our youth at Lighthouse Insight and at LightHouse Arabia. And if you found the content of this talk relevant and you enjoyed the webinar, please go and leave us a review on Google and share your thoughts of the webinar so that others can also sign up next time we run something like this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to allow a few minutes for questions. So if you just allow me a moment. Okay, so I'm going to go through the Q&A section and just see what we have over here. In terms of time spent on devices, we don't allow screens on weekdays, but the children 5 and 8 years do have access for half a day at the weekend. Is there any risks with this approach? One large block of time per week. For context, we don't allow social media at this age, but they do play games, educational and other. I think that if you have got a structure for how you do it, I think that works quite well. And I like that approach that, during the week, no access, and on the weekend, there's a block of time that's allowed for that. So as long as you know what they're viewing and what they're watching, that's okay. But as long as you've got the boundaries in place. So I actually like that. Okay. I just received a message. Is the board game sold in the UK? No, it's not sold in the UK. So if you do want to order it from the LightHouse Arabia, you can go on to our www.smartheartboardgame.com. You can go onto our website and you can order it directly through LightHouse Arabia, and we will ship it to the UK. But we are working on that at the moment to get it available on Amazon in the US, in the UK, in Canada, and Saudi. Parents are not equipped or prepared to deal with all this. What support can they have from schools or other entities to help their children be more conscious users of technology? And are schools prepared? Some schools are. Some schools, invite us in and we do this talk within the school. Teachers are aware. It depends on the school that your children are at, but I think that what I want to say here is focus on what is within your control. As parents, Sometimes what your children do at school isn't always within your control. The fact that they are on iPads at school isn't within your control. But do you know what is within your control? What they do when they come home from school and how they're using technology when they come home from school. So focus on that and get that right. Let's see if there are any other questions here. Shouldn't you encourage the schools also to reduce education on apps and tablets? Yes, I think that it would be great if schools were doing that. But again, I'm going to be focusing on what you can do. Focus on what you can do. That is going to make a huge difference. If your child has a phone and they're taking it to school, that's a problem, right? If your child has a phone and they haven't been taught how to use the phone and the etiquette behind the phone, that's a problem. Focus on what you can do within the home. And if that can be reduced significantly, that's going to make a huge impact on the child and their development. My son just turned 13 and is begging me to make an Instagram account. Haven't allowed it yet. What value-based rule could this be so I can explain it to him? Oh, okay, let's think about this. It could be that in our home we value privacy, and having an Instagram account is going to give people access to your world, and we don't want that yet. Or in our home we value, let's just think, what else can we value? Anybody help me? Let's think. Yeah, this is a tough one, but I think that you need to stand firm with your value. In our home we value balance, and the fact that you are already on WhatsApp, or the fact that you're already using games, we don't want you using Instagram as well. And when you are ready to be in that virtual space, we will be the first to put you online, but we don't feel you're ready yet for that. We feel that you still need to build the muscle of self-regulation, right? So when we feel you're ready, you will go on. And if they say to you, but everyone else has it, then you say, well, that's not a good enough excuse. Because if your children say, well, everyone else has it, then your child grows up and wants to buy a Maserati because their neighbor has a Maserati, but they can't afford a Maserati and they end up being in debt. So everyone has it isn't a good enough excuse. How do you maintain the boundaries of your home when their peers, friends may have different boundaries? What do you tell a child who you don't want to have a phone when all their friends might already have it? So again, you just explain that in our home, these are our values. And I have seen parents do this. So I can see how it can be done. I have one of my best friends has got 4 children, 3 of which are teenagers, and they only received a phone when they turned 16. Okay, right? So, and in that time, they read, they played sport, right? And they still got invited out. So they weren't necessarily excluded in the way that the children will often portray it. But you can find ways to do this. You can allow your child to use your phone and to, save the friend's number on your phone, and they can WhatsApp the friend from your phone, right? So you can do it in certain ways. There are ways to do this where your child won't feel the isolation. We will be sharing the recording with all of you, and you can share it with your family members. My children always interrupt me when I talk to someone. I have been telling them not to do it, but the more you want to talk, the more they do the things to steal your attention. What should I do? Create time in the day to have that one-on-one time with your children. And I believe that you can have 15 minutes a day of one-on-one time with your children. That can make a huge difference when it comes to them feeling connected and feeling heard and understood. So you can say to your child, we have got 15 minutes of uninterrupted one-on-one time at 4 p.m. today. That's our time. And label the time. So if your child's name's Jake, say it's Mommy and Jake time. And in this time, we get to do what you want us to do, right? So just remember this, that if you label the time, the child is going to feel like they got their time with you. And then you need to ditch your phone, make face-to-face contact, make sure the eye contact is there, engage with your child, get down to their level and listen to them. So if you can guarantee them that they will have their time with you, and that time will be in 15 minutes time, then they are less likely to bug you in every minute of the day. Make sure that they have time with you every day, which may be 15 minutes. That's enough. Okay, it's quality over quantity. I have 4 kids and it's so difficult to check in every moment what they are doing. It's affecting their studies. 12 and 15 have a phone, 9 and 6 don't. So we try to turn off Wi-Fi in the house and control it, but when they do have homework, they take advantage to play. We don't know what to do and how to manage. They get mad if we take out the Wi-Fi. It's okay if they get mad. You don't need to be your child's best friend, again, is what I want to say. And often parents will say, oh, but my child's not going to like me. It's okay, they don't have to like you. And if they don't like you, you're probably doing your job. So what I'm going to say here is, it's okay. You can be mad at me, right? Because all feelings are accepted in the home, but not all behaviors. You're allowed to be mad at me, but you're not allowed to slam the door in my face, right? And so I like the idea of switching off the Wi-Fi because there's certain periods of the day that we can have it and we can't. And if they do have the iPad in their room and they're doing homework, every now and then go and check in what they're doing, right? Or ask them to do homework in the living room so that you can supervise it. Okay. Right, I'm just checking if there are any other questions coming through. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming through. I'm going to share my screen again so that you guys can see our Instagram pages and you can follow us online. And, you know, we are often sharing the latest when it comes to research in the field around technology usage, around child development, around different parenting strategies, around how to increase emotional intelligence in the home. So please do have a look at our parenting pages at Smart Heart Board Game and at Lighthearted Parenting. Right, so I don't see any other questions coming through, which means I'm going to be ending the webinar now. But it was lovely connecting with all of you, wishing you all the best. And if you do have any questions, please just DM me at Smart Heart Board Game and I will make sure to answer you there. Wishing you guys all the best. Take care.